All right, YouTube, Kennard Vernon Stewart here for the podcast. Talking Auburn football, go ahead and subscribe to Vernon Speaks Sports Auburn. Big Cat Weekend has come and gone. And now Auburn is, just like every other college football team, is at the home stretch about to get ready for fall camp. And guess what that means? That means there's going to be a little bit more personnel that's going to be entering campus because, as you know, there are some guys that are early enrollees, which is the guys that participated in spring football. But then you still have the guys who are going to enroll, in a more traditional fashion. One of those guys is Robert Woodyard, the top recruit of this past recruiting cycle. We look forward to seeing what he has to offer. Go ahead and like the video. Also, become a member of the channel. There will be some perks down the stretch. Also, I'm going to leave in the comments section, I'm going to pin it to the top. I'm going to leave my Cash App just in case you want to contribute to the channel, which we definitely always appreciate that. Excuse me. And as always, it's great to be an Auburn Tiger, War Eagle. All right, so week 1 of college football, my goodness. The games that are going to be played. We're going to get back to subject in just a second, so don't worry. Okay, so let's start August the 27th. So we're about 26 days away. Okay, so August the 27th, we got Nevada versus New Mexico State. That might be a good one. Who knows? I think we'll just be watching those just to get back into the field of college football. Oh, here's a good one. I think UNC might struggle. University of North Carolina might struggle with Florida A&M. How about that? First day of college football. That game is going to take place at 8:15. Interesting matchup, guys. 10:30 p.m. and the game is so late because they're playing out in Hawaii. Very interesting game as Vanderbilt is going to be taking on Hawaii. That might be a game to watch. And I'm not being sarcastic at all. Another big one, I think, for the Big 12. You got West Virginia versus Pittsburgh. Let's see. Let's continue on down the line. If Florida International taking on Bryan. Who the heck is Bryan? Central Florida, Gus Malzahn and his crew taking on South Carolina State. Actually, this is a rival that used to be back in the 1AA days for UAB. UAB will actually be welcoming Alabama A&M into their brand new stadium September the 1st. And that's going to be at 8 o'clock p.m. in Birmingham, Alabama. Also, let's keep going. Let's find some good games. I know Texas A&M is not going to struggle with Sam Houston. Let's see. UNC, App State. So they got a game in two games in a real short period of time. Uh-oh. Things get real tricky. Arkansas is going to be taking on Cincinnati. This is going to tell us a lot of what we need to know about both of those football teams. Very interesting matchup. Of course, we have what is probably from a box card standpoint, going to be the biggest game of the weekend is going to be Georgia versus Oregon. I mean, you really can't take anything away from that particular football game. After that, matter of fact, Mississippi, Ole Miss needs to be careful because Troy has traditionally been able to slip up on some teams. As a matter of fact, beat LSU a couple of years back. So that's one that Ole Miss would need to look out for. And, of course, our game, Auburn versus Mercer, a game that Auburn actually struggled with during their 2017 campaign. Excuse me, Mercer was within 4 points late in the fourth. I mean, kind of midway through the fourth quarter. I mean, people were kind of getting nervous about that one. That's, of course, everybody's excited to see Auburn hit the field again. And I think, okay, you got Notre Dame and Ohio State. Of course, that's going to be a big one from a billing standpoint. I think a really interesting game is going to be, dang, I lost it. An interesting game is going to be, that's next week. Clemson actually takes on Georgia Tech, which is a conference football game, starting out with the conference game. Georgia State taking on South Carolina. South Carolina needs to be careful there. Oh, here it is. Utah versus Florida. Utah has had some major success out in the Pac-12 and is going to be taking on a coach, brand new head coach at Florida. So I think that's going to be a really interesting matchup there. Last but not least, I don't want to look over this one. You got two brand new head coaches in Power 5 football in the Deep South. You have LSU, brand new head coach. You got Florida State, brand new head coach. And, LSU, brand new head coach. Florida State, second year head coach. And I think that's going to be a really interesting matchup. As a matter of fact, let me dig this up to see where they're going to be playing at. Florida State, LSU, at LSU. So they have to go down to the Bayou to take on LSU. All right, so let's get into the Big Cat weekend. Some of the takeaways from the weekend. Always a good event. I think any event like this where you can expose players in a really expose players to your school and you don't have to travel at all. I think that's pretty cool. Now, a lot of people probably wonder, well, why does Auburn even do this? Well, I'll give you my thought process. And it's probably the thought process that mirrors Auburn as well. Now, many of us know that Auburn is somewhat known nationally. And I say somewhat, and I'm using that word very loosely. When you ask a person, say, about Alabama, you out in California, you ask someone about the Alabama Crimson Tide, it's probably going to be a little bit more familiarity with, say, the Alabama Crimson Tide or Penn State or Florida State or Michigan, Nebraska, those kind of teams. Those kind of teams I would think would be considered your blue blood teams. So a team like Auburn, kind of right there in that middle tier of national relevance. So a lot of players just don't know. And especially a lot of your blue chip players just don't know. They're being recruited by some of the best teams, whether they're currently good or whether they've been really good in the past, in the country. And let's just say you ask a person, say out in the Midwest, hey, what do you know about Auburn? They probably know a little bit about it, but then they have to think about it. They have to say something like, oh, Bo Jackson. Yeah. Cam Newton. Stuff like that. But Charles Barkley, they start naming basketball players. So I believe that Auburn does this because although Auburn has had an abundance of success in their history, they're just not known nationally the way you think. So in this Big Cat event, you have guys that come, they get to know the school, they get to know some of the other players that are being recruited. And for some, it's just a trip. Hey, I was invited. I probably won't go to the school anyway, but hey, it doesn't hurt to go. I love the attention, which is great because if I was a blue chip football player, I'd do the same thing. Then you got others who are interested, aren't quite ready to make a decision, especially with this 2023 class, aren't quite ready to make a decision, but they're like, hey, I'm going to go. I was invited. This gives me an opportunity to see a little bit more of what the college has to offer. I get to be on campus to see how the campus really rolls. I get to see how the city is, all that stuff. Then you got the guys that are ready to sign, but they like, hey, you know what? Enjoyed the visit. I'll be back this fall. And that could be a lot of them. I'll be back this fall. I want to hit that, that Auburn LSU game. I want to hit that one. May even want to hit the Auburn Mississippi State game. All of that stuff. Okay. So in this particular Big Cat weekend, if you were expecting for Auburn to have a slew of signees in the 2023 class, just didn't happen. In my opinion, I'm kind of glad it didn't happen. Because what you would have had, those would have been some emotional commitments. And that's not what you need. What I'm thinking is that a lot of players really like a lot of players who have come in contact with Auburn, they kind of like what's going on. At this point, I think they need to see the results. They want to see the walk behind the talk. Okay? So that's probably why you didn't get a lot of recruits. Got a couple of recruits from the 2024 class, which we will talk about a little later on. That's really not relevant to this particular video. Go ahead and like the video, comment, and subscribe to Vernon Speak Sports Auburn. And as always, it's great to be an Auburn Tiger, War Eagle. So with all of that in mind, Auburn seems to finally be picking up some momentum on the recruiting trail. One thing that we can probably all agree with is the fact that the class is obviously not large. But when you think about the quality of each particular player, if Auburn continues this trend, you could be looking at a really successful recruiting class. Not only from a talent standpoint, but also from a depth building standpoint. Also, Auburn could be in a position to, I think the biggest news story is Auburn being in a position to flip 4-star offensive tackle Bo Hughley from Georgia. That would be huge. You know why? Auburn needs offensive linemen. Now, a lot of folks may think that this year's offensive line may be bad, but I don't agree. We're going to talk about that later on as well. So let's talk about what Auburn has so far in this recruiting class, the 2023 recruiting class. We talked about him earlier, Carmelo English from Central Phoenix City, Alabama. Man, I'm going to tell you like this. I am a big fan of Auburn recruiting in the state of Alabama. Really like that. Really like that. Jeremiah Cobb, actually got Jeremiah Cobb out of the state of Alabama, Montgomery Catholic Preparatory School. When I was in school, we just called it Montgomery Catholic. I guess they got to add the preparatory for a little added punch. One of the best running backs in the nation, number 16 in Alabama. He's 231 nationally. Now, that may not sound good, but when you think about all the high school football players in the country, actually, when you think about all the football players nationally, the number of football players, I think being 206 nationally is really not that bad. Number 6 running back, number 15 in the state of Alabama, 4-star recruiting ranking. He might be better than that. Who knows? Terrence Love from Langston Hughes in Fairburn, Georgia. Now, see, one of the things about these Georgia recruits, especially on the west side of Atlanta, I was actually talking to a guy today where it's possible that you can get to Auburn, depending on what side of Atlanta you live on. You can get to Auburn quicker than you can to work, and you live in Atlanta. That's just how quick it is to get there. So that's why Auburn is able to snag these guys, because they're still an SEC school, but they're dangerously close to Georgia. As a matter of fact, the state line from Auburn is 28 miles from exit 51. Oh yeah, you can get there quick. Also, Auburn picked up Wilkie Denard from John Carroll High School in Fort Pierce, Florida. 6'4", 245 pounds, a 3-star recruit. He helps to balance out the edge linebacker. And last but not least, you have Braden Joyner, offensive lineman, 6'1", 330 friggin' pounds. One of the best Actually not ranked nationally yet. Number 46 offensive lineman, inside offensive lineman, number 23 in the state of Alabama. Right now, Auburn is ranked 69th in the country and 14th in the SEC. However, the average recruit rating is pretty solid, and that number 15th nationally on 24/7 Sports. That means of the guys that they do have, they're pretty solid on that. So you just got to get some more like them. All right, so Big Cat Weekend didn't necessarily give immediate impact to the 2023 recruiting class, but it's kind of like planting a seed. You know, you're not going to plant a seed and you have all these watermelons and stuff grow the next day. You plant the seed, you put the idea in their head, they go back home, they think about it, then they start to see the stuff developing as the games start to happen, and you get a situation where Auburn starts winning football games, and you just have to go with that kind of flow. All right, go ahead and like the video, comment, and subscribe to Vernon Speaks Sports Auburn. And as always, it's great to be an Auburn Tiger, War Eagle.